Third time's a charm. Little technical difficulties today. Most of those difficulties are user error. Anyway, good afternoon and welcome to Brewing Happiness, the afternoon edition. Now, do you sometimes think you are starting something new, something fresh, exciting, it's intriguing, and you're all interested only after you're in it for a while to discover that it starts to look like something similar, something that same old thing dressed up like something new. And then when we're honest with ourselves, we see that there are patterns at work around us all the time, and we are always repeating things, always, all the time. I mean, that's because life is about patterns. And we think, like I said, we're starting something new, but it starts to sound familiar. And that's life, looking at patterns, recognizing patterns. That's what we're going to talk about today, the patterns in our lives, how we cycle through things and do things the same, how things that served us well at one point may not serve us well at other points. I'm Tina Ann. This is Brewing Happiness, special afternoon edition. If you're here on the replay, drop me a line. If you're here live, yay. Thank you for finding me after 3 false attempts with computer and microphone troubles. But here we are today to talk about patterns. Life is about patterns, right? That's our job. As our brains, as in a survivalist modes, our brain is designed to keep us alive. That's basically what its job is to take all the inputs, all the sensory inputs, all the information that's flying at us, our past experiences, what we can see, taste, smell, touch, what we know, what we've heard, and assimilate all the information, analyze it, and tell us how to react to keep us out of trouble, right? That's your brain's job, basically, fight or flight, keep us happy or keep us alive. And then to do that, the job of the brain is to take all this sensory input and then predict what comes next. That's our job. Predict what's going to happen next so that we can stay alive, right? So in this prediction process, in the process of trying to predict what is the next thing, we naturally gravitate towards patterns. I don't know how to describe it, but our brains dig it. We dig rhymes and music and drumming and things with a beat, right? It's primal, and sometimes you're listening to music and you can't help your foot starts tapping and you don't even realize it because there's a pattern at work there. There's a beat. I used to tell my kids when one kid would get in trouble and another one would do the same thing and not get in trouble. Well, how come he's in trouble and I'm not? Life is about what happens one time. It's about the patterns that we develop, right? And a lot of times those patterns are things that happened in our childhood. We grow up in the rhythm of a family, in the relationships, in the way people treat each other, and the way they react to things they don't like, and their expectations, the level of control, the level of comfort that's offered, the level of affection that's offered. These are the patterns that we all grow up with, right? And we spend our whole lives sometimes trying to repeat those patterns, trying to fall back into or find the comfort of those patterns, even when maybe those patterns did not serve us well, right? Maybe they served us well as small children to avoid the ridicule of friends or to make excuses for the unavailability of comfort from a parent, or whatever it is. We develop in childhood the way we deal with things, and then that's where we are. That's what we love. That's our comfort zone. That's what we know, right? Again, that patterns, prediction. We're going to predict what happens next. We want to know what's going to happen next. I'm telling you, this is so ingrained in our brain. This is why we love to. Do you have a favorite album that you listen to over and over again? This is why we love to hear things that are familiar to us. This is like we like music we know versus maybe new things we don't know, or why we start to like things more the more certain songs we like them more the more we hear them, because the familiarity, that knowing what comes next, to hear the beat and know what's going to follow, to have a favorite album. I'm showing my age. Album, yeah, record collection, whatever. And to at the end of one song to automatically start to hear the next song that comes next because we listen to it and we develop that familiarity, and we come to depend on being able to predict what happens next, right? But again, maybe something that was good for you at one point in life is no longer your friend. And yet, because we love the pattern, because we love to know what's going to happen next, because we love to know, we love the knowing of the know, we want to stay where it's comfortable. We want to recreate what we know in that comfort. So, all this pattern recognition, we may not use that pattern recognition in our personal lives, right? Maybe we're not recognizing some of the patterns of behavior or emotions or thoughts, but like I said, we stay in our comfort zone, even if it's not that great, even if it's kind of causing us some unhappiness, even if it's not what we see in our brains as our best life, as our best self, as our best opportunities. And yet to step outside that comfort zone of that comfort of knowing the pattern, of knowing what behavior gets what reaction, and then how you're going to deal with that, and how maybe another person's going to deal with that. That comfort of knowing keeps us stuck where we are. And so we recreate, we try to find and live in those familiar, comfortable patterns, versus dealing with the discomfort of moving outside of that, right? Once you're out of the comfort zone, by definition, outside of the discomfort zone has entered the discomfort zone. And then that, we don't like that. We don't like it. We want to stay in our comfort zone. We want to know what to expect, even when what to expect is not that great. It's not what we want. And yet there's comfort in familiarity, right? And so we repeat it. I heard someone say one time, the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So you got a pattern and you deal with it by numbing your senses with whatever is your favorite vice or diversion. Then that's how you deal with probably everything that discomfort that comes your way, right? However you deal with it on a microcosm, you deal with it on a macro level. How you deal with it in your personal life is probably close to how you deal with it in your professional life. So, and then what happens? Generally, we recognize patterns, right? When we're honest with ourselves, when we stop and recognize, we start to see a pattern in our lives. We start to recognize the connections of how this connected to something either in our younger selves or the way we dealt with something that happened with us. And like anything, you don't just all of a sudden recognize it and then it goes away, right? You don't just go, oh, I do this thing. I'm in this pattern and then the pattern is over. That's not the way it works. I mean, the first step is you recognize that you're in the pattern, right? Just seeing, oh my gosh, here is a pattern that I can see is happening over and over in my life. That is the beginning of the process, right? That's certainly not the end of the process. That's just how we, being aware of it is just the step that says, oh, there's that thing I do. Oh, and then the first time you see it, it's after it's over. The deal is done. The deed is done. You behave in a way, or something plays itself out, a conversation, or a set of actions, reactions. You go about something, you get what you've always got, and you go, oh, I've seen this before, and you recognize the pattern, but it's done. You're not making a change, right? You're just going, oh, that thing I just did. That's part of that pattern thing. Well, this is fantabulous. This is fantastic. This is the first step. This is how you make the change, because you recognize, here's that thing I'm doing. I'd like to change. Knowing, seeing it, and wanting to change. That's all that is. The very first step. Recognition and desire to create a new pattern. And then, like anything, little work involved, right? You have to stay conscious. You have to have a plan. You have to say, "Okay, this is what I'm doing," and understand maybe a little bit about where it came from, and then say to yourself, "Okay, this is how I'm going to deal with this in the future." And then you recognize that that's not gonna happen the first time you go, "Oh, I'm doing that thing again." You maybe the first thing happens is you feel it creeping up on you, and not after the fact, or you feel it when you're in the middle of it. "Oh, I'm in the middle of doing that thing again." And then eventually you can feel the triggers. "Oh, I'm about to do that thing again." Even sometimes when you're powerless to stop it. Even recognizing it and knowing it is sometimes not enough to make the change, and that's okay. This is a process. It's a long change is hard, and making a change, changing a pattern, uh, creating a new habit, uh, shifting a lifetime of doing something over and over and over again in multiple situations is not beans. It's work. It takes effort. It takes consciousness. It takes a willingness. Uh, it takes it takes a willingness to honesty. It takes a certain amount of objectivity to be able to step back and observe yourself and honestly assess what you like or don't like about it and what changes you want to make. And start to make a plan that when I feel this coming, here are some ways I might behave differently. But I guess the message I want to say is love yourself through the process. Love yourself for recognizing that there's a pattern in your life that's not serving you. Love yourself and be proud of yourself for wanting to make this change, even when it's hard, even when it takes a long time, even when it's exhausting to drudge up the effort to to make the change, to change the habit, to recognize the behavior, to recognize it earlier and earlier and earlier in the pattern, to have uh, the fortitude, the intestinal fortitude to stop yourself and say, I will not do this anymore, and this is how I'm going to behave instead." And then to actually have the bravery and the courage to change a pattern when everyone around you knows you and knows what to expect and knows how you react to things. And then to have the courage to actually make that change, even if it's in tiny little changes, tiny little increments, and be willing to weather the consequences or whatever comes from when the other people who are used to one pattern and they see you change might not be that happy about it. And then, but you've stood up, you've made the change. You've said, "I'm okay with your new reaction to my new behavior," right? That takes courage, man. And that's the message is you can do this. You can do it. Recognize the pattern, analyze it to say, "Yes, this is good for me," or This is not that great for me." And then when it's not that great for me to say, "And this is what I'd like to do about it." Right? That's that's the game. I see something that I don't like, that I learned maybe in my youngest days, maybe helped me to deal with things that were difficult for a child to understand or accept. Our brains are amazing things. Our minds, our souls are amazing things that protect us, that wrap us in, and maybe obfuscate things a little bit. Maybe have us have a shift in perception or a blindness or a willingness to accept the unacceptable in order to survive. That's childhood sometimes, right? And to be brave enough to open our eyes that what we think is unchangeable is just a decision, to what we think is just something we're stuck with is really just something we learned at one time, and just as we learned it once, we can unlearn it and learn something new. These are life-changing ideas though, right? Simple stuff to understand and to discuss, but not that easy to do in real life. But this is the truth for all of us. The truth is we're born into, I mean, psychology studies show over and over, we're born into a set of family dynamics. Our parents, most of them, never wanted to hurt us a single day in their lives, always wanted to do what was best for us. And yet they brought to the table maybe the imperfect parents of their own and their own patterns and ways of dealing with those imperfections. And that goes back and back. And that's why we carry leftovers from our ancestors, from our family, because they've ingrained behaviors that become then our patterns. And then, maybe they're great. Maybe you got lucky and you got born into a family that everything they do is love and everything they do is love and acceptance, right? But maybe you didn't. Maybe your family, while loving and while meaning to love in all their, like I said, in all their history and all the things they learned and all their patterns, we're just teaching you to carry forward patterns that made sense at one time but don't anymore. And that's the question, is right, is how do we break the patterns of the past? And I didn't really come today to talk about how to break them, just how to recognize them, right? Just the understanding that they're there, that sometimes what we know and watch gets better because we're watching it, because we're being aware of it, because we've brought it into the sphere of things we care about and are willing to make adjustments for. I don't know. But I'm going to share a poem today. It's a personal poem. It's super personal, in fact. It is about my patterns. It's called The Little Girl I Used to Be. Because, again, it is my contention that we're born into a set of dynamics, good, bad, somewhere in the middle. We learn them. It's our pattern. It's our comfort. It's what we know. And we go out in the world and we try to recreate them, good, bad, or indifferent. We try to recreate those patterns. And sometimes that's to our benefit and sometimes not so much. And the secret is to know the difference, right? To have an open eye and not just fall into patterns that we happen to be born into, not just fall into the reactions that we happen to learn as we were young, but to design our reactions, to design what we want to keep, what we don't, what's good, what works for us, what doesn't work for us so much, and what we want to let go and let be an X pattern or an X way of doing things. But again, not that easy. We love what we know. We love our old familiar playlist, right? We'd rather hear our old familiar songs than brand new stuff. Our brain likes to know what's going to happen next. There's a certain comfort of going what's going to happen next, even if what's going to happen next is not that great. So, right? The question is it working for you? The question is, do you have a pattern that is bringing you comfort and joy, compassion, kindness, forgiveness? Or is it bringing blame and shame and self-doubt? That's up to you to decide, to analyze and say, which of these patterns is working for me and I shall keep, and which ones not so much. So to that note, I wanted to end today with a poem. Again, a highly personal poem about those patterns. If I can get through it, I don't know. It's kind of, like I said, it's really important to me. This is called The Little Girl I Used to Be. Because the little girl I used to be lives on these days inside of me. She holds my pain and fears and more, hiding behind the closet door, remembering each hurt and slight, afraid to close her eyes at night. She waits and watches over me when I am still too scared to see. Her fear can give me trembling hands, but it's she who always takes a stand. When paralyzed from memory's grasp, it's she who takes the fear to task. Fleeing, fighting, whate'er it takes, it's she who knows what are the stakes. To keep us safe. She takes control, wrestling with our heart and soul, using tools we learned so young to prepare us, to protect us from the sharp of tongue. For so many years, she's protected me from every danger we could see. with eyes so wide, so wise, so sad. For oh so long we were all we had. But now I see with open eyes and see the truth and where it lies. That she has carried me so long, her shoulders wide and oh so strong, protecting me at every turn. But now it's time for me to learn to take the reins from her to me and become the one she needs me to be. Stepping in to take command, holding tight to her tiny hand to let her play and laugh and sing and step beyond the closet's wing, choosing new and better ways that lead to joy and happy days. Knowing that the fears she faced, the scary thoughts had all been based on those few lessons that she knew, the ones we learned before we grew. I'm working hard to make her see she'll always be a part of me, but now that she can let her fear go, and deep inside that she will know that she is truly, fully loved from deep within and up above. Patterns of our lives. Start in childhood and continue until we say yay or nay. So that's our show for today. If you like the poem, you like a copy, give me a DM. I'll send you a copy. That'll be in my new book coming out sometime at the early 2022, All Things in Rhyme, A Journey in Life. That's the working title right now. Anyway, until tomorrow, please send me the poem. I love it. And thank you for sharing. Azure Miranda, it is yours. I will be sending it in the DM as soon as we're done here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And until tomorrow, this time thing is making me crazy. I don't know what to do about the times. I started off as a 7:00 coffee show, but it was so early. I started doing it at different times, and now I'm bouncing all over the place, and hopefully by next week I'll decide on a new time or go back to the old time. Anyway, until then, thank you for watching. The poem is on its way, Azure, and until tomorrow, make it a happy day.